All right, guys. Good afternoon, and welcome to the afternoon session, the most important session you will attend at Springboard, don't you think? Yes. This session is about unit-level economics and what that means. I want to ask real quick, how many people in here are just starting in franchising? Just starting, okay. And do you talk about average unit volume at all? Okay, that's a phrase, a terminology that we use a lot in franchising because it's important. Average unit volume, that's the average of the stores and what they produce from a revenue perspective. But what a lot of people don't talk about is unit level economics. And what that is franchisee profitability, right? As franchisors, that top number matters for us because of the royalty. But that bottom number matters even more because if you don't have strong unit level economics, you're not going to have franchisees that are going to be successful. You're not going to award more franchise licenses. You're going to have unhappy people and a lot of problems. So we're talking about the thing that matters today. To get us started, I'm going to have our panel introduce themselves. I'm going to start with the king of Ibata.
And my heckler table right here. So I'm Sam Ballas, the founder CEO of East Coast Wings and Grill and co-founder with Sammy Sliders.
Hi everyone, I'm Frank Milner. I'm the CEO of Shooter Doctor. We are an international education franchise operating in 15 countries.
Cool. Hi everybody, I'm Michael Iannuzzi. I'm a CPA and I'm the partner in charge of Citron Cooperman's franchise accounting and consulting practice.
Hi everybody, I'm Andrea Hovermuth, the president of Fast Signs International.
So we have a very talented, esteemed panel here. Great brands, great tenure in franchising. They know a lot about things that work and things that don't work. And so we're going to start with the first question. And the first question I have is more of something that maybe some of the people in this room can associate with because it's going to be based on a personal experience in your brand. So a time when you've had a tough decision to make that directly impacted the unit level economics. And what was the outcome? Does anybody have a story?
I'll go first.
Okay.
For me, it's easy. I mean, well, before I go to that, let me ask a question. How many here, raise your hand high so I can see you, have more than 10 franchise owners in your system? All right, keep them up. If you don't collect monthly P&Ls, put your hand down.
If you don't collect.
If you don't, right. So 10 hands stayed up, 11, 12, 13. Carolyn, I knew that. I can't tell you how imperative it is to get your culture in line when it comes to profitability for your franchise owner. So the hardest thing I think that I had to do, and most of us who around COVID had to do, is to figure out how to take a system you sold franchise owners about in a period of, in my case, 3 weeks, or it might have been, 7 hours, Whitney? Figure out how to restructure the entire system so you can operate and not have everybody go Chapter 11. And you had to make some really tough calls. You had to figure out what are you going to sell, what are you not going to sell, what can you sell, and I'm in the food space, so bear with me for non-foodies. What are you going to sell that has the least amount of prep, the better throughput, the least amount of workers that you could keep in your operation? What can you do to restructure something that you had as a model you've sold a franchise owner to, and all of a sudden they're all looking at you across 5 states, in my case, on what are we going to look like tomorrow? Extremely difficult, right? So you had to literally go to franchise owners that were buying my FDD that has an item 19, because I'm a big believer in item 19, which is a financial disclosure, and pretty much tell them, we have no playbook. If there's any time I'm going to ask you to trust the franchise model and all the talent that we've assembled in the franchise model, this is that time to trust it. And we're going to try to figure out how to keep you open. We're going to try to figure out how to keep you profitable so you can at least keep paying your mortgages or keep paying your bills at home with as least amount of inflection as possible. And that's probably the toughest time that I've had to really sit down and not just fix, Shane, maybe a supply chain problem, but have to restructure the entire brand of what somebody may have just bought a year and a half prior of the pandemic. It was really, really tough to go to somebody and say, what you bought, sorry, we're not that no more. We're going to be this until further notice. Now, a franchisor has to take a lot of heat for that. So, you got to not take royalties. You've got to not, take marketing fund. You've got to have the discipline to have reserves and live off of that when you have that kind of a curveball thrown to you. So that's probably my toughest experience in my 19 and a half years of franchising.
And that had a great outcome.
It had a great outcome. So, some of my operations team is sitting in the room. We had 2 goals: stay afloat, keep sales moving. We had franchise owners making more money during COVID, respectfully for those who dealt with a different piece of that puzzle. We had an opportunity to capture takeout business. Third party was almost dead on the vine for the restaurant space. Your Uber Eats, your DoorDashes, they were pretty much being told by the venture capitalists in California, no more money. Make profit or shut it down. And COVID saved all them. So we embrace that that's going to be here to stay, and just a culture shift of the lens in the food space. And how do we retain some of that business while we rebuild our dining rooms back and ancillarily increase our AUVs, which ultimately, if it's coached correctly, drives bottom line profitability. So we were lucky. Wings traveled, and so we're able to kind of function through that. But that was a tough calling, to look at somebody in the eyes, in some cases on a Zoom, and say to him and his wife, or him and his significant other, or her significant other, I'm sorry, but what you bought, it's not us no more. You're just going to have faith. And we got very lucky. Our franchise owners embraced that, and we rolled with it.
Thank you, Sam. Real quick, too, I didn't introduce myself. We were having mic problems. My name is Shane Evans, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Massage Heights, membership-based massage and skincare concept, founded in San Antonio, Texas. So, Frank, do you have a story that you'd like to share?
Well, just listening to Sam, it's like reminding me of those days, and I think I might have a bit of PTSD, but
This is microphone.
Is the mic on?
Take this one.
hello? Oh, there we go. It was a really funny joke, but anyway.
Still got the laugh.
Yeah, no, I'll just piggyback off that a little bit, because we had to make some really big changes when COVID hit operationally. We're an in-home model. We actually send our tutors to the home to work with students, and all of a sudden we couldn't do that. Similarly, our marketing, we do all our marketing in the community, like feet on the street in the community, and we couldn't do that any longer. So we had to make some big changes really fast. And one of the things we did was to look to the outside to see who could help us make the changes that we needed to make as quickly as possible. And we actually brought in some outside consultants in the marketing arena to help us develop new strategies that our franchisees could continue to execute on, so that they can continue to bring revenue into their businesses. And we had to shift from a community marketing to online marketing, which we had done a lot of online marketing, but not community marketing online. And those were the expertise we sought to bring in-house, so that we could teach our franchisees to do that really quickly. We did that, and it was okay. It wasn't like gangbusters. But as we went through the change, and as we got through it, and as things started to normalize again, it did create a lot of efficiencies in our business, in the way we operate our business. So prior to COVID, we would go and sit down with families pre-enrollment, and we'd take them through a consultation process and whatnot. After COVID, we don't do that any longer. Now we do all of that virtually. And that's resulted in a big efficiency for our franchisees in their businesses. So I think, we've got to look for opportunities when you're handed lemons to make lemonade, and that's our role as franchisors in tough times.
Thank you, Frank. I want to go on to another question, and I think specifically for you, Michael. So just financial discipline and bookkeeping. How important is it that the franchisees maintain good books and records, not just for daily operations, but for making real-time decisions for planning and future growth?
Sure. So I think there's some big brands up here. So I think everybody up here will agree that the franchisor's number one job is to make sure that your franchisees are profitable. If they're profitable, the rest of itself will the story will write itself along those lines. So I'm a CPA. I'm not saying that your franchisees need to be accountants or bookkeepers, but the good operators out there understand their business. They understand the numbers and what they mean. I'm not saying they have to understand how to make accruals and certain depreciation rules, but they need to manage the business from the P&L and the balance sheet, not just the amount of cash that's sitting in their bank statement. So for those that raise their hands that collect P&Ls, the question is, what are you doing with those P&Ls when you collect them? Are they just sitting on your desk or in your inbox for 3 months? Is anybody looking at them? Are you sending key information back to your franchisees to benchmark the system, certain KPIs that are important to each of your franchisees? These are the things that you should be doing as a franchisor to help those franchisees become profitable. There's also software that's out there that can automate some of these things. We'll touch a little bit on that later. But at the end of the day, if the franchisees are profitable, they'll buy more units, the franchisor will succeed, and the brand will go on and thrive.
Thank you. Andrea, kind of just going off of that topic of financial records and all of that, in the Fast Sign systems, can you give us some insights, and then also for Frank and Sam as well, insights on how you support the franchisees from a unit level economics perspective? What does that look like for you? A process? Do you have business consultants? What are you reading? What are you getting? Where are you getting the data? And then how do you leverage that data to help them be successful?
So I know Michael said we're going to wait on the software, but I'm going to jump right in. Anyone who knows me knows that I have a long background in technology, so I'm going to jump right back into software. And we use a system called Profit Keeper. I got some Profit Keeper guys up in the front. Ups to Profit Keeper. So,
checks in the mail.
And so Profit Keeper integrates with QuickBooks, which is what our franchisees use, and that allows us and the franchisees to have access to key metrics every single month, not just at the end of the year. We're not looking at profitability just at the end of the year. We're looking at it every single month. So corporate has access. Our business consultants have access. It allows them to have much smarter conversations with the franchisees. Data-driven decision-making. It's critical. In this day and age, there is literally no reason why we shouldn't be making data-driven decisions. We can't just be going off of gut. We have all the technology in front of us to do this. So we utilize that system, and then we analyze that information, and we have smart decisions. We have smart conversations with our franchisees about that. Additionally, we have a system in which we collect all of our data from all of our integrated systems, and we use that in combination, so operational information as well as your financial information. So our business consultants are using that in all of their regular visits.
And I will say, just in my own personal experience, for all of the emerging brands or those of you that are thinking about franchising, get these systems in place right from the get-go from a financial management perspective, because it is very hard to get franchisees to start doing something different if they didn't start there.
And let me add, if I may, Shane, it's also critical when you're an emerging brand or a re-emerging brand, right? A re-emerging brand, to give you kind of a very broad definition, is a brand that's emerged and you went to a certain level of growth, and then you realize, what David Barr talks about all the time, right? Your intellectual capital gets in trouble. You're not sure how to grow the next level, and you kind of have to make change and bring new talent in and make those really hard decision processes. So you kind of like re-emerge that next level, like a booster rocket helping you go forward. But I think critically what Andrea says is all true, but before you get there, you've got to understand what to measure, right? The brand has responsibility. You franchisors in the room, you bear the responsibility to understanding what you're measuring, why you're measuring it, and then what moves the needle that you're measuring, right? I've had the privilege of having a lot of great, smart mentors in my franchising career, and I was always taught to measure everything, but to identify as quickly as possible in what you're measuring creates needle movement in your system. And for us, it has to be, at the unit level first, right? So it's critical that you understand what to measure. It's critical that when you get to technology and you get all this help, to gather the data, as Andrea talked about, what are you going to do with it? Right? What do you do with all this data? So you should hone in on the franchisor is responsible to hone in on the data that helps your franchise unit level, your franchise owner's unit level numbers move from top revenue through the P&L, because the middle part of the P&L is where everybody loses money and makes money, right? And then how you get that navigated to the bottom line. Then once you figure that out, you have to understand how to articulate that into a strategy back at the unit level, which what Andrew talked about was, your FBCs, your franchise business consultants, or whatever you want to call who you have in place to do that. But more important than even all that is, what's the follow-up with that? How do you go back to look at those accountabilities to start measuring even you as a franchisor's ability to hold that accountable in a way that the franchise owner is going to embrace it and not be offended by what you're trying to do with their economics, right? Because at the end of the day, it's their money. And I tell our franchise owners all the time, even when I get into a CEO debate with a franchise owner who's been there 14 years, I remind them, listen, we're going to agree to disagree because I earn on the top line. You can have a 1% EBITDA, that's the third shot there, or you can have a 37% EBITDA, which I have franchise owners doing 37% after us in our system. I earn on the top. And we let them understand that with a lot of clarity, that you can take our coaching advice, you can use the systems that we know and we trust will help you move the needle, or you cannot. I'm still going to earn from that AUV you have, right? So that is crucial. It took me 4 or 5 years to understand how to find the right data and then how to measure that data, and then more importantly, how do I use it? And that is your first big step before you start investing in layering technology process, and right from a mature brand like what Andrea is running right now is awesome. But when you're an emerging brand and you don't have that capitalization and you're Excel spreadsheeting yourselves to death, because I know you are, you're not going to admit to it, but you are, because we still do, and we may be a small regional brand in count, but we're very mature in how we run our systems, and we still have Excel spreadsheeting that we use when it comes to collecting some of the data.
Great insights. Frank, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just great comments, really great comments. I just want to kind of double click on something Shane said. We're about 15, 16 years into our journey, and only recently in the last couple of years have we developed a financial dashboard for our franchisees. So making it easy for them to review their financials and their KPIs is really critical. The point I want to double click on is to do it early and to do it as early as possible. If I could wind the clock back, this is something I would have done years and years ago instead of just recently, because the impact can be massive. But the change management piece in now, with 300 plus franchisees, trying to get them to change their habits is super challenging. And yet it's so critical, especially on this subject of financial management. It's probably an area where many franchisees are weak, and we have to help them develop the discipline to do these kinds of reviews consistently in their business so that they are making those data-driven decisions.
Yep.
So-
And I think also like making them feel comfortable. We know you're a business owner and you're running things through your business that maybe you should or shouldn't, but let's just call that add back. We'll put a different line in there, and you can put that in there, but we want to actually see where you are based on the expenses that are really associated with the business. But I think telling them, like, we understand that you're going to do that. Don't be afraid to show us your P&L.
Yeah.
I don't care if your boat is in there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, let me give you one quick nugget before she goes next question. One quick nugget. If you don't have in your franchise disclosure document, your FDD, and your franchise agreement arsenal, go back and add an agreement that the franchise owner signs at the time that they sign the franchise agreement that says, something you can fax in, email, scan, however you need to do it, send overnight, get it to the CPA or the accounting firm that gives you permission as a franchisor to ask anything you'd ask in the submitted data. That's critical to have that right to do so, because when you make that phone call and that CPA says to you, Michael says, I can't give you that information, right? It's client attorney privilege, client CPA privilege, whatever that comment's going to be, right? Well, I've got something that says that they're allowing you to do this. Can I email you this document and let's have a conversation about it? We'll email that document in, and then the world opens up to us. You won't believe some of the things you find in those P&Ls that we get in, where you've got, everybody in the family, mom and dad, grandparents, cousins, best friends, cell phone bills are in there. You got to clean that data up. You can't report for an IM-19 correctly if you allow that data to stay inside of that P&L. And the only way that you can really take that challenge on, and for what Frank's talking about, going backwards now and rolling in 300-some franchisees to get that mindset of culture redone is going to be challenging. But if you have that document from day one as part of your culture process, and you can zip that to the accounting firm and have that open dialogue conversation and have them open that QuickBooks and give you that next piece of information that you can then divest it out or call the franchise and say, hey, we really don't put royalties in top-line sales, right? It doesn't belong there. It belongs here. We don't do, cost of sales here. It belongs there in a chart of accounts that we have. And we don't put all your personal things that you want to run through the business through here when you report to us. Now, how you do your tax work with your CPA is a different process, but for what you report to us, we need to have all your personal itemizations out of that documentation. And you won't believe how many times they don't even know it happens. Right, they're just clicking away in their QuickBooks from a bookkeeper. That then goes to a CPA, to a tax return, and the CPA will take that and just kind of plug and play with what they've been given in that QuickBooks file. So that'd be a nugget that I'll share with you. Get that document with your attorneys talked about, that you can have at least that arsenal of documentation. If you have to really challenge something, you're not offending anybody by emailing that in and getting those windows opened up in QuickBooks.
And with a line item of miscellaneous random expenses. Yeah.
And if I could add to that on top of what Sam is saying, if you're going to do that, which I think is a great idea, you have to do it. Enforce it. Make the collections, make the phone calls, read the P&Ls, actually do what you say you're going to do, because then it loses its value. And then the franchisees see that you're not enforcing it, they start to lose focus, and then they don't want to do it. And with the price of technology today, there's a lot of good systems out there. Profit Keeper, you mentioned, we use Vena. There's a lot of good systems out there where you can roll this in at a pretty inexpensive cost and get it set up from day one.
Yeah, and
I think value is the key word there, and that is you're going to need the value to get your end users, which are your owners, to adopt this if you haven't done it from the get-go. So I'm going to go back, and at the risk of hurting this horse even more, we have 780 locations at Fast Signs, and we have been around since 1985. And we're just starting to roll this out in the last year and a half. So it is no easy feat to do this now and to get people to understand how important it is to get this into the system and to be looking at it regularly. We've been focused on profitability from the get-go. It is a huge piece of what we talk about constantly, but getting them focused on looking at it on a regular basis in a system where we are actually helping them map it. That's what we're offering. we're helping you map it. Then all you need to do is hit sync once a month and it's there. So helping them see the value is part of that. The ease of use is the other part of that. So thanks for mentioning that.
And the ancillary process of all this really is also beyond just your franchisee profitability. You also have the opportunity then to build a storyline for financing. It's huge. If a franchisor does the right things and your franchise system embraces that, regardless of what it may be, Excel or platforms or tech stacking, you're also ancillary building a storyboard for your brand as a culture and how you help them manage profitability. And so, you know, in our brand early on, we would send lenders like a deck page, right? You know, in insurance, you have a declaration page that tells you everything you get in your insurance policy for your auto and your home, whatever. It's called a deck page. We create one of those for financiers and say, here's our brand and here's our brand's performance. And oh, by the way, here's how we help the people who are asking to borrow money from you manage the finances on their revenue streams as a support mechanism. They love it. If you build the story correct, it's like almost having an injection of adrenaline at that bank when they see that performance process, and then they ask the questions, you give the right answers, so it helps your lending out incredibly if you do it the right way. So you got a lot of ancillary pluses beyond just the franchise owner's profitability and unit level economics. You're also creating a brand story of how you can help your future candidates finance your deal.
Love that. Love that. And you can put more information in item 19, which a lot of operators want to know the bottom line, right? And what can they expect to make out of the business? And if it's not in your item 19, you cannot tell them that. So the more you collect, the more data you have to give to prospective franchisees, and the better they can make decisions as well. So. And
item 19 probably isn't far away from a regulatory environment and being almost a standard have to do. Yep. Right now, everybody gets kind of a don't have to do it. You can just say, I'm not doing it. Or you can say, I'm just going to do 3 items listed there, or the whole P&L as we do, right? We put all the P&Ls in there as a medium P&L. It's not the same thing as your audit in the back of the FTD. We are approaching regulatory environments where it probably won't be long from now that they'll say, you have to have an item 19 in the document for you to sell franchises, to register your franchise, your FTD. And if you don't do things and build that culture beginning correctly, you may become not competitive with people in your space who do it better and have the item 19 there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think it'll, as far as from a regulation standpoint, do you think it'll get as specific where they'll tell you what you have to have in your item 19?
Look, there's no telling, but being involved with the IFA in depth and on the board level and watching the inside of all this fighting that we do with the FTC and NLRB and joint employer and what happened in California. And keep in mind, we were part of the deal in California where we forced minimum wage to go to $20. You know, we had 2 bad deals, and IFA supported the better of the bad deals. You know, we caught some heat for that. We did what we thought would be the best for franchising in California. So I don't have a right answer for that, but I am telling you that the way that Lena Khan's going right now, and if the administration goes a certain kind of direction, it won't be long before, because most of the complaints from franchise owners when it comes to the Federal Trade Commission is not making money. It's the number 1 complaint. Or I was sold a bill of goods that didn't exist, or it was overstated. So your documentation's got to be not just accurate and truthful, right? So I just feel like, based on what Shane and I deal with at the board level of the IFA, it's not far away from item 19 being probably a mandatory process. And to be frank with you, I'd be a proponent for it, right? I'm a Wall Street guy. Who's had a 401k or had a 401k in here? How many of you have actually read your mutual fund prospectus that's 175 pages long of onion paper? Nobody has, right? You just get the list and just, you know, Vanguard and Oppenheimer and whatever, Contrarian, and you pick your funds and you go, right? But there's documentation by law you have to have access to read. We are the only business model, in my understanding, where it can be sold as an investment opportunity with a regulatory FDD, but not a financial regulation, just an audit. So I don't think we're far away from them pivoting and saying, well, time out here a minute. You're basically selling an investment, and you're not really regulated like everybody else is regulated. And all you have in your document for regulation of performance is item 19, right? And the franchisor's audit is the franchisor's. It's not the unit level deliverable, which is item 19. So I would highly encourage you to really dig into that with your attorneys and your accountants to make sure that you find a strategy to start looking at item 19, because I don't think we're probably within a 5-year span of that being on the agenda.
Can I comment on the item 19? So the item 19, if you think about it, is coming from the books and records of the franchisees, which are not, unless you're in a large system and you have large multi-unit franchisees, those books are either on a cash basis, accrual basis, tax basis, franchisee does what they want basis. So you're then taking their numbers, putting it into your document, and selling on those numbers. You better be doing the things that everybody up here is saying to make sure that those numbers coming to you are accurate to put into your item 19.
Great insights. Thank you, guys. I want to get maybe back to the middle of the P&L. And Andrea, I'll go to you on this one to start, or anybody can jump in that would like to answer it. But we know that there's rising costs, right? And I mean, everything is just costing more these days, from employees, labor, to equipment, to everything. What creative or unconventional cost-saving measures have you implemented or observed in a brand, for you, Michael, since you see a lot of these, that are helping with unit-level economics? Any insights?
Yeah, so I'm going to go out on a limb here and call this unconventional, but it's actually conventional. And what we realized is that, folks are so busy in the business that sometimes it's easy to forget the basics, to forget the fundamentals. And so what we did several years ago is create a document. It was really our Bible on profitability and key tactics that need to be in place in order for you to protect your business. So the document is about keeping your business healthy no matter what the storm is. And within that document, we go into detail with the top steps that you need to be taking. So, number one, cash is king, keeping reserves, being careful about that. Number two, managing your costs and having a system like a Profit Keeper can allow you to look at those numbers on a monthly basis and be able to adjust. So you may want to raise your prices based on those costs. If we look at last year shows us how quickly things can change. And if you don't have your eye on the prize and looking at this regularly, you are going to be in trouble. So looking at that and renegotiating with your vendors, even going down to the utility standpoint, looking at your cell phone providers, looking at your electricity. Who else can you negotiate with to control your costs all around the business? Maybe not investing in specific pieces of equipment or technology before you actually need it. So scrutinizing that before you actually make that type of investment. And then finally, driving sales. Going back to the fundamentals of driving sales. What's that about? So targeting, being smart about your marketing activities, not just casting that wide net, and then making sure that you understand speed to lead. That's pretty critical. Speed to lead. Follow-up is key. Deepening your relationship. So we have this document, and it sounds great, you just have a document, but every business consultant has it in their back pocket. We're talking about it all the time. We're talking about it in our quarterly publications to our network. We are always making sure that this is front and center, because there is a lot of uncertainty out there. And I think, for some number of years, everything was kind of going great for lots of businesses, and things are still going great, but there are threats, there are headwinds. So we want to make sure that we stay on top of it.
Will you share the Bible? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I mean, sure, we could be sure. Yes.
I'm guessing that's very proprietary, but that's awesome.
Well, I mean, there's parts of that that are not, because these are actual fundamentals and basics of profitability.
Love it. That's great. Anyone else want to add anything specifically that you've done in this crazy climate to help with unit level economics?
Yeah, I'll just say, similar to Andrea, I think creating something like the document you're talking about can change everything in your business. We did something similar, and we created what we call our 4 fundamentals. And just creating something in that way allows you to have those conversations around the fundamentals of your business all the time. And just having your whole system talking a universal language like that and having buy-in and agreement on what those fundamentals are is hugely important. So again, the sooner that you can create something like the document or the 4 fundamentals or your version of that, the sooner you create that common language for that ongoing discussion, keeping those critical things front of mind all the time as they're in the day-to-day grind, because those are the things that tend to go out the window as they're grinding along. So super, super important.
Yes, it kind of reminds me of a comment somebody gave me one time. That there's a definition of business insanity where you just wish for a different result on something you just keep doing over and over and over and over and expect it's going to change, right? It's not going to change. The brand's got to change. For us, basically, with all this inflationary pressure from post-pandemic that we all thought in 2020, we'll be done in 6 months. And then it turned out, we'll be done in a year. And then we're in 2022 late. We're like, when are we going to fix this inflationary problem? Where's manufacturing going to get fixed? Now you're 2 years into it, and you're still trying to figure out what's going on. So, good brands has to change their lens and look at what you do as a brand. Now, we're a food brand. So we went back and re-engineered menu items. We just expected the profitability just to stay the same by putting it out the same kind of way. So what can you change as a brand and test that you can do a burger build to make it very simplistic in a different kind of way that sustains the taste profile that you want? And does it save money from prep back of the house to actually a SKU of itemization in building that burger, in our case? And then by putting that out there at maybe an increased inflationary price point, did you drive to the bottom line in that category of better profitability or gross profit for the franchise owners? So you just can't sit as a brand when you're going through an inflation period of time or inflection period of time doing nothing and expect it's just going to change. And you can't also sell yourself out of it. You can't go back and just jam one department and say, Mark, you owe me more business. Top line sales, top line sales, top line sales. Yes. But that's not going to fix it in the interim time. You got to manage that middle of that P&L, which is your cost factors. So maybe your brand, if you get put in those kind of categorizations of inflection, and you're dealing with inflation, or you figured out you're not gross profiting the way you should be, maybe you should be testing and re-engineering your product lines. Or if you are a service brand, how you service that customer to figure out, can you do the same style service, the same result in a more profitable kind of way? So for us in the food, it was fairly simple. It was changing the lens and saying, okay, let's get rid of menu items that just we can't figure out how to sustain profitability because inflation's gotten out of hand. And if you've got a good servicing element for your customer base, they're not going to miss 2 or 3 items or 4 or 5 items if you have other opportunities for them if your servicing platforms are in line. So you could be that bold all the way to re-engineering an item that may be popular in a way the consumer doesn't miss the build because the taste profile's again in place. Again, strategic processing to drive gross profitability in our world, in the food space, in order to help maybe an existing or a stagnated, because traffic's down for everybody. I mean, if there's anybody who can tell me that your traffic counts are going through the roof right now in new customer bases, let's have a hallway conversation. Because all the statistics I've been looking at, from food to non-food, is going down as a consumer sentiment is getting more negative. And of course, we're in an election year, and it happens traditionally. But you just can't wait in that business definition of insanity, thinking to do nothing, and because of your tenured brand of 20 years in the making, that you're just going to keep selling stuff, right? You've got to change your lens and re-engineer yourself and evolve yourself to keep that middle of the P&L moving the best way you can, while then you go to Ashley and say, more sales eventually, but you can't take your marketing department and make them the sole deliverer of you, coming out of this the other side of the tunnel the right kind of way, right? The brand's got responsibilities for the franchise owners to figure out how to keep that battle moving forward in that front line, while the tent's figuring out how to strategically take the rest of the continent, right? I think Ron had a hand up out there.
I was going to say, questions? Yep.
There's another element to the P&L, or to the cash flow that doesn't show up in the P&L, and that's principal repayment of debt. And right now, we're seeing a lot of franchisees that are making money and struggling with cash flow because they took 5-year loans. And all their cash flow is going to pay the bank back, and now they're working for the bank instead of working for themselves. So I would encourage everybody not only to get I would encourage everybody not only to get P&Ls. P&Ls are really important, but net cash flow is the way you measure. And I got the same license plate as you do. My license plate says EBITDA on it. But that's a valuation tool. It's not an operating cash flow
Copycat.
tool. And I think it's just really important, at least on an annual basis, to get a balance sheet and see how much debt they have, because they could be growing their way so fast to being out of business.
So Ron, if I may, I'm going to piggyback on what he is correct. And I'll give you complete transparency. I got a franchise owner who jammed me 5-6 months ago that they can't figure out what happened to their earnings. And this has been a good store. So I said, send me your documentation you're a month behind on. Send me your bank statements. Send me your loan balances. This just happened to be a franchise owner that Ron's company back in the day helped. What's that? Help finance. So help finance. I won't mention the franchise owner because it's not important. And when I got the documentation, I'm looking at this, I'm saying, wait a minute here. You could take the principal balance you have, refinancing it from 3.5% to an 8%, and drop your cash outlay of that PI that's going back in, that principal payment, almost $6,500 a month. Instant cash flow find, right? While they're trying to figure out the rest of this territory they're in, had also some COVID processing happen to it that lingered. I won't mention the city, Philadelphia, but it lingered forever, right? It took forever to get this town out of COVID for some reason. I don't know why, but it just did. But there are good finds in the balance sheet that we actually collect. But there are good finds, and those refinances, and they were so stuck on, why would I go from 3.5, Sam, to 8? Because we just found $70-some thousand of freed up cash flow that you're giving to the bank. And, okay, it's going to extend my debt service a little longer. Yeah, it's going to extend your debt service a little longer and give you time for you to dig out of what happened during the pandemic and the community you're in who kept you in it longer than the rest of the nation was. But in that time, when you fix all that with the help of the brand behind you, you can accelerate that payback and shrink that new debt finance balloon payment that's going to go to another 5 years. So there are some great nuggets in what Ron just said, that if you look at the balance sheets, you can help a franchise owner free up cash flow that may be stuck exactly how you just described, Ron, with that principal payment being old.
Thank you for that. I'll stop. We've got 5 minutes left, and I want to just open it up for questions. Yes, sir.
One of the things we did in our company was when we came out of the pandemic, we didn't want to increase prices. We didn't think it was the right time. But we sourced out to have our clients pay for the own credit card percentage. And since we've done that, we waited a while. We wanted it to be not be the first one to do it. And it tremendously increased the bottom line in the stores. And I'd just like to share that with everybody. People are used to it. It's happening at gas stations. It's happening at restaurants. Everywhere you go today, the merchants no longer, or the store or salon, we're a salon business. And it's a big thing for us. When they have a $150 ticket or they're getting extensions, they don't even really notice the difference of a 3%, 3.9% is what we actually have our clients pay. So it strongly suggests if you're still paying your credit card fees, you really should look into passing it on to the clients.
Yep. Yep.
No pushback whatsoever.
Yep. Thank you for that. Anybody have any other questions? Questions for the panelists? Okay, panelists?
I just have one thing I want to add. So I think we were going to talk about this, but
I was just getting ready to come to you, Andrea.
well then.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Here
Close
we
out.
go.
Close out.
Look at that. I'm going to take us home, everybody. And actually, maybe on a high note with the suppliers. So mutually beneficial relationships, partnerships with vendors are key. So as a franchisor, we have really worked on creating a strong supply chain and strong relationships with our suppliers. And we do pay attention to what the costs are to our franchisees. So if we are seeing that something is a little bit off, or we're seeing one supplier that is supplying the same types of materials but for less, we're going to look into that, and we did that. So some years ago, we saw that one of the best top name vendors out there, suppliers actually, was charging more than another. And we looked into it, couldn't really move the needle, but we had created a strong relationship with a lesser known name, and that made all the difference. And we moved a lot of our franchisee business to that supplier, and it drove down those costs for the franchisees. So it is very important as a franchisor to be paying attention to those relationships that you're making and the types of discounts or exclusive pricing and all of that that you have in place.
Thank you, Andrea. Anything else from the panelists? Anything you feel like you didn't get to say that these guys should know?
Two most important things in franchising: your franchisees and your franchisee profitability.
EBITDA.
Never forget that. EBITDA, 4.
EBITDA.
Any other questions
Ron
from the
Feldman.
group? Any other insights from the panelists? Anything else that you feel is burning you have to share? Michael,
Well,
you see...
I'll say one thing. We spent a lot of time on the expense side, just cover the revenue side. At the end of the day, the franchisees, especially when they're contributing to the brand fund, national fund, as you're starting out, there may not be enough money in those funds to actually advertise at the local level. Somebody should be educating, teaching, coaching the franchisees on how to get out into the marketplace, join their community, schools, chamber of commerce, network in the community, and drive the top line to their business locally as well.
That's actually something that we did back in 2010. Notice that the foot traffic was really slowing down in our centers. We have physical locations, and the foot traffic really slowed down. So that's where our outside sales approach was implemented, and it was tested. And we knew this is a big investment for our franchisees. We're looking at upwards of 50 to 100K in investing in a new hire, but we tested it and proved that we were able to increase AUV and profitability across the board. So now that is required for each of our centers to have an outside sales professional. So that's one other thing. One other thing I'm going to add is that we can't forget about efficiency. And for me, it comes down to, again, technology. Our roads lead back to technology. So AI. I don't want to partner with any software providers that don't have AI already built into the system. We need to be thinking about wasteful spending. So if you can drive efficiencies within whatever business you have, then we can focus on those growth activities.
Thank you. Any other burning things that anyone wants to share?
I'm done burning.
Andrea is always burning, so.
Andrea's now on ice.
I love you, Andrea.
Love you too.
Thank you, panelists. We appreciate your insights. We appreciate all of the sharings, learnings.